Hello everyone, welcome to Red Snapper. My name's MJ and this is Snap or Pass, where we look at the new cards each week in Marvel Snap. This week we're looking at the new Series 5 card, Gorr. He's a 6-1 with the ongoing effect +2 power for each on reveal in play. We're going to look at the Spotlight Cash week that he's in, all of the mechanics about the card, counters, cool locations and bad locations. There are a couple for this card. You can skip to a section you want using the chapters below if you want. If you're new, please subscribe. We are racing towards more subscribers. Anyway guys, let's talk about the Spotlight Cash that Gorr is in first of all. He's alongside two Series 4 cards, so this is not the highest value of weeks. Pretty poor from that perspective, but they are at least, I was going to say they're at least good cards. I mean, Havoc is alright, really. Havoc is extraordinarily niche, but it can be surprising. And perhaps it fits alongside Gorr in a nice way in sort of like a Mr. Negative deck, because that's probably where Gorr fits the most. We'll obviously look at archetypes in a moment. And Legion, who's a very good card, great in RSM. Beyond that, hasn't got masses of utility, not the most important card. I mean, listen, I'm sound like I'm downplaying it. Legion is a good card, but these are both Series 4s, so we can't get super excited. Let's move on to Gorr and the mechanics about him. This is a very cool and a very exciting card. I'm buzzing for this card. I think it's cool. Let's talk about it. So the archetypes I think he'll fit into. The set power archetype. This is an archetype that we've sort of seen almost established by Agent Venom recently, alongside Bast. These are a couple of options to boost Gorr's power, giving them either a +3 or a +4. On reveal archetype, obviously you're going to want to play Gorr with a lot of on reveal cards. Negative, this is really the best place for Gorr because having him flipped to a 0-costed card with 6 base power is just insane. And then maybe he'll fit in RSM as well. RSM allows you to play generally more cards, so if you're playing more cards, you're playing more on reveals, and it also allows you to play Gorr earlier, and then that unlocks crazy combos for you. So maybe Arnim Zola, maybe Mystique. And finally, maybe Gorr fits into, well, this is, I don't mean finally as in, this is the only place you can play Gorr, but maybe Gorr will fit into ramp decks. Could you possibly get him out early via some sort of Electro and some sort of maybe destroy thing? The slight difficulty with ramp is that you need to get enough cards out, and generally ramp plays fewer cards but higher power. So we'll see quite if that shakes down. Other points to note about Gorr, he's another huge power card, so similar to Blob and Red Hulk, who each have their own sort of very specific specialties. Is that an okay thing to say? So Blob, obviously you need cards with big power in your deck, so Blob doesn't fit into every deck. Red Hulk, the downside to him is that he reveals himself to your opponent, so it lacks the element of surprise. I think Gorr might be the most interesting and most flexible one of these, because generally speaking, people play on reveal cards. You can build your deck towards Gorr if you want without too much thought. You just need to be careful that you don't put too many non-on reveal cards in your deck. They don't know that you've got him, and so he could be coming down as an extremely powerful card. So this might be a really big one as like a surprise card. He's got a very, very high ceiling, especially in negative, in a Mr. Negative deck or a game where the peak is activated. He can be a 26+ power card, so he can easily carry a location. And it's an extremely powerful effect that can be copied or duplicated via something like Mystique or Zola, as we mentioned a minute ago. You can get multiples of this guy. Not that hard, especially obviously in a Mr. Negative deck. That's just outright easy to do. Pros. It's a great new tool for Mr. Negative and decks that set base power, so Bast and Agent Venom, as we've already mentioned. Because the set power decks mostly rely on lower costed cards, their ending used to be something like a Sage and then a, I mean, I say Wolfsbane, not Wolfsbane is a bad example, but Sage and like Ironheart could be one thing that you might do in that deck. But I think what the presence of Gorr allows you to do in those decks now is play out all of those very high power cards that would usually be your finishers that you're saving. You can actually play them out a little bit earlier and then play Gorr out on the final turn And you're kind of like contesting everywhere. The slight downside to that is that might be something that your opponent will retreat from. So maybe there is those kinds of considerations. But Gorr is still going to be a surpriseful card, I think. I've just said the word surpriseful. That is not a word. That's not a word. It's easier to fit into more decks than Blob because on reveals are more broad. And so that might be quite a flexible card and fit into decks as a reliable 30. I've just combined these 2 points. I thought I could combine those 2 points really fluidly, and I ended up being utterly influid. So influid, in fact, that we have seeped out of the frame, which is actually fluid. Seeping is fluidicious. Fluid. I'm just making up every word under the sun. Let me split them back out. Easier to fit into more decks than Blob because on reveals are more broad than high power cards. So this is a potentially flexible high power card, and might be quite a flexible card that and fit into decks as it's actually just this sentence is terribly worded. He's going to reliably be 13 plus power, basically. That's what I was going to say. If you consider the average game, you can easily play down 6 on reveals, 7, 8 on reveals. So that's what, 16 minus 1, that's 50. Like, you can reliably get Gorr to 15 power. The difficulty of that is that you can't always, on the final turn, you can't always win a location outright just by playing a high power card. Your opponent might be tackling the other 2 locations you were already contesting, already winning. They can Shang-Chi you. So there are these considerations. However, if you can pack enough on reveals into your deck, which is easy to do, especially via cards like Kate Bishop, Snow Guard, these are cards that are cheap themselves and generate, well, either cheap on reveals or just multiple on reveals. You can then pin down some other locations, and if you can get enough down and secure either one or either other location, you can then attack a location that they didn't even think you were going after, and you're not necessarily giving signals that you are going to play Gorr, and you can win this other location with like 20 plus power or something. Like, especially if your opponent is playing a lot of on reveals, and if your side of the battlefield is riddled with them, this guy is not even hard to get above 20, is he? Like 10 on reveal cards or 11 on reveal cards? That's like sort of extremely achievable. The cons. He's significantly weaker against decks which don't have many on reveals. Obviously, if you're playing a lot, maybe you can get him up to 15, 16 power sort of easily. And like I say, maybe you can hit that 20. But that's if you're playing 10, right? 10 or 11. If your opponent is playing 0, they're an ongoing deck, it's much less likely that Gorr is going to be able to win that location single-handedly. And it's quite simple. It's just big power, albeit it's copyable, it's affected by other factors, but it is just quite a simple card, and it's not doing anything special other than giving out a lot of power. And, well, I guess it is doing something special in the negative decks, but let's move on to the locations. There is quite a number of good locations, and there is a couple of bad ones. So one bad one is Space Throne. This is bad for a number of reasons. So first of all, I mean, if you're attempting to win it with Gorr, there's things like Clog that you've got to consider, or whether you'll even be able to get in there, or there's Shang-Chi, or there's Echo. There's like traps you could fall into if you are going to try and do that. But not only that, it's reducing the number of spaces by, what, 6? So that's 6 less on reveals you may have. It's just overall, it's going to bring down Gorr's power. Isle of Silence, of course, is going to be absolutely horrific. Not even bad in the normal sense of an ongoing bad being bad in Isle of Silence. Literally unplayable because you can't even get power in there. It's a -1, so it's literally pulling your power down there. However, some good ones include, obviously, the peak is absolutely crazy. Taco Truck is particularly good because you are generating a free on reveal card, which you can actually play out itself and not merge it, so that gives you 1 extra. And it's 2 power, so it's technically like a 0-4. I mean, obviously for your opponent it's a 0-2, but if they play theirs out separately, maybe it's even more for you. Orcus Forge is good. It's generating Sentinels, so it's potentially generating multiple on reveal cards. Nor Dimension, similarly, is very good. Not only is it producing multiple on reveal cards, but they're actually free. They're free to play. Limbo is great because an extended game means you can play out more on reveals, and it also means you may be able to get out Gorr early, or you may be able to cheat it out play multiples or blah, and then Krakoa is just good because if you can play Krakoa, if you've got Limbo, you've got magic in another location, you can get that Gorr down on Krakoa. Absolutely gangbusters. I dare you to lose that game. He does, however, have some heady counters, guys. Echo is going to be an absolute nightmare for him. If your opponent knows what you're doing, they know that you're going to try and win a location single-handedly with Gorr. They have got 5 energy at least to try and win one of the other locations, and they can slap down the Echo on the remaining location. This is, of course, if they've got priority, and completely remove the power. Rogue is a nightmare. Going to steal massive power from you, similar to an Iron Man. Enchantress obviously knocks it out, and Shang-Chi completely knocks it out as well. In fact, Enchantress is sort of the worst thing because it leaves the -1 power on the field for you, which is, yeah, just awful. So let's talk about key synergies. Some other key synergies that we've not... actually, we've spoken about all of these, but let's talk about the cards that work well with Gorr and some deck ideas for you. So, as I said, we have spoken about the set power stuff and the negative stuff. So we've got Bast, Agent Venom, and Mr. Negative there. Those are all pretty self-explanatory, I think. But some of these shield cards, I think, are going to be really good with Gorr. Like, will Gorr fit into the shield archetype as a really nice finisher to try and hammer down one location and then you just try and improv win one of the other locations? Very possible, because we think about cards like Snow Guard, 1-cost card herself, she's an on-reveal and she creates 2 on-reveals. Those can both be interesting. Location manipulation, they're good. You may not be playing out both, but it certainly lets you potentially play more, gives you more options and more resource. Hawkeye, on the other hand, she creates what? 3 different on-reveal cards or an ongoing card. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily want to hit the ongoing card, but she can create those other on-reveal cards, and those are really good. And she, again, herself is an on-reveal. And Mystique can copy this insanely powerful Gorr effect. So that was a weird, creepy smile that I think I just did then, to be honest. So, Roided Negs is the first deck that I've got for you. This is, of course, a negative deck. And this is a slightly different kind of negative deck to our usual style. So we are elongating the game with magic because we do have Gorr. If we do happen to hit Gorr at full cost, we don't really want to play him out on turn 6. We want to play him out alongside one of our big cards because we've got other finishers, and hopefully, basically, these 3 6-cost cards basically all allow you to duplicate Gorr, and you want to play them in combination. So you've either got Gorr into Taskmaster or you've got Gorr into Arnim Zola. Now, the rest of this deck is trying to fill it with as many on-reveal cards as possible. So we have got Ravonna in here, and we have got Mystique in here. Obviously, Mystique we want to try and hit on the Gorr. Other than that, everything else is a non-reveal. So we've got Zabu, so hopefully we can get a little bit of a cheaper, either a Mr. Negative if it's already in your deck, or maybe we get a cheaper Jubilee. There's not actually many 4-cost cards in here, partly because there's not many low-power on-reveal 4-costed cards. But we've got that. So, because we've not got masses of 4-cost cards and not masses of cards that we want to play out early, we've got a little bit of generation here with Hawkeye Kate Bishop. She also, crucially, is the only card that you don't really want to flip with Mr. Negative. Not the end of the world if you do. You can still play her out late, especially if you've got magic. And then the other cards that do particularly well via Mr. Negative, of course, are Sage and Ironheart. Sage, if she's flipped, might even be a Taskmaster target if you don't happen to hit the Gorr, or maybe you've hit a Sage and you haven't got many other on-reveal cards out, and it's just more worthwhile using a flipped Taskmaster on the Sage instead of the Gorr. Would that ever be the case? Would Sage ever be higher than Gorr in that situation? I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on to the next deck. This is Venomized Power. So this is a set power deck, but I wanted to do one that either has a really good curve or has a bit of pixie madness. So we can set the power of everything in our hand. Silver Sable has recently come down, so she gets even more benefit from being flipped now, so she's in there. We have got the Bast, we have got the Agent Venom, we have got Hawkeye for that generation, Kate Bishop Hawkeye I should say, for that generation. In fact, she's in all of these decks. I think she's going to be one of the true key synergies for Gorr because she does create so much on reveal and she is so cheap. We've also got those classics, Ironheart. We have got Cassandra Nova in here. I did toy with putting some rock generation in here, but couldn't quite fit it in. And then our finishers in this deck are Iron Man and Gorr. And I think just generally you have got enough here to pin down locations. With that extreme burst of power from Agent Venom, you can certainly tie down a location with Sage or a surprising Ironheart, or fill a location and they don't know what you're doing and then you buzz it with some Ironheart. So that's one way to win a location. And of course the Gorr can hopefully single-handedly win one location, or you've also got Iron Man in here as well, which is a terrifying threat on the board. Not an on-reveal, but just generally speaking, you've also got Pixie as the sort of backup plan, and they don't know what you're going to do. You do have a lot of 1s, 2s, and 3 cost cards in this deck, so hopefully your Gorr and Iron Man might get jumbled up with those. Maybe there does need to be a slightly different spread of energy in here, though. But fun vibes. Now this last deck, I'm really not sure about this, but it could be a fun one. I've called it Sticky Ramp. It's a Quicksilver Wiccan deck, so you get the Quicksilver out. We got loads of 2-costed cards in here, and the cheeky inclusion you might see is Maximus. You might be thinking, why on earth are you playing Maximus? Well, guys, Gorr gets more powerful if they're playing more on reveals. If they've got more cards and more access to their resources, they might well be doing so. Now, that is obviously a consideration. Is that actually good? Do you actually want to be giving them cards? Quite possibly not. But maybe it will be a cheeky inclusion. We do also have some Shanna in here to potentially draw loads of on-reveals out herself. We've got a little bit of generation with Agent Coulson. We have got a wave as sort of a backup plan if we do pull that Gorr early. Gorr is really the only thing in this deck that actually benefits from wave though, so it might not be too hot. But then we have got the Red Guardian for a bit of counterplay. We have, as I said, we've got the Wiccan in here. Hopefully we can get that Wiccan out early, because we do have some resource generation. We've also got Mirage in here, which I thought might be a good one. Not only to generate more on reveals, but also because it might help you hit the Wiccan more reliably. And yeah, the rest goes without saying. It's just vibing. It's vibing, isn't it? Right, let's talk about the star ratings for this card. Overall, I do think he's a 4-star card. I do think he's very good. I think he's definitely, like I am confident in saying, even if you just stuck him in a random deck, I think he can easily hit 13 power, which is just generally very good. Like, or I should say, is it? No, it's good if it can be surprising, I suppose. But really, that is sort of what I see him being as easily able to achieve. I think he might be able to get a lot more than that, especially if you've got him in your hand. You're going to see what power level he's at. So I think there's good opportunity for this guy. I think within the archetype, I mean, 4.5 stars. If you're hitting him with Mr. Negative, he's absolutely crazy. Like, he's absolutely mad. So I really do think he's Iron Man levels if you hit him with Mr. Negative. Fun, I've only given 3.5 stars. I don't think it's mind-blowingly fun to play extremely powerful things. Like, he's not very interactive as a card. And competitive-wise, yeah, I do think he'll do well. I do think he'll fit into a lot of decks, and as such, I think we will see him in the meta. So I've given him 4 stars from that perspective. Ultimately, is Gorr a snap or pass? I think he is a snap. Probably, anyway. I don't think he's in the strongest week. And I think he's a little tiny bit boring, but I do think he's going to be good. So I'm interested to see what he does. Yeah, I am buying him with tokens. That's my current plan anyway. My current plan, buying him with tokens. That's what I'm planning to do. What are you doing? I would love to hear. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe for more, because coming next week is the double whammy, Galacta and Lunar Snow, as we enter the Rivals season. I'm so excited. Make sure you tune in. I'll see you then.